Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a stranger at Toronto Community Centre begged her to spill its secrets. "50's too young to bury magic," they said, eyeing her like she'd hidden a winning lottery ticket. Truth. Linda's journal held more than grocery lists. It dripped with untapped dreams, lit by decades of scribbled wisdom no empty nest could erase. Now a virtual circle of women waited, screens glowing, hungry for her bold ink. Time to uncap pen. Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a rainy Tuesday found her tracing its cracked spine, fingertips brushing memories of scribbled grocery lists, and half-finished poems from when her hands were too busy rocking strollers to hold pens. Now silence echoed through her Toronto condo like an unplugged fridge. She opened it with clumsy step of someone relearning stairs, ink bleeding as she wrote. 50 feels like wearing last season's coat, familiar but not quite right. A laugh bubbled up. Who knew grief could be so, lit with absurdity? Her daughter's old community center flyer fluttered from between pages, virtual journaling circle, Wednesdays, and Linda clicked link before courage fled. Faces pixelated onto her screen, strangers turned confessors. A woman in Arizona described loneliness as a misplaced teacup. Linda blurted, "Mine's like a subway seat left warm by a stranger." Group erupted in snaps. Weeks passed. Her notebook grew plump with haikus for frost-laced windows, rants about yoga pants that lied about comfort, and one glorious entry about eating pie for breakfast just because she could. That leather cover, once stiff as her old corporate persona, softened with use. One evening, she caught her reflection smiling back from a cafe window, not ghost of a mom who used to be, but a woman wearing laugh lines like medals. Notebook, now tucked under her arm, didn't hold emptiness. It held proof. Some stories begin when others end. Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a rogue maple seed helicoptered onto its cracked spine one breezy Toronto afternoon. 50 and suddenly alone in her quiet house, she'd been vacuuming shadows off baseboards when nature's little joke landed. Chuckling absurdity, she flipped open journal. A pressed dandelion from her daughter's middle school days fluttered out. That tiny rebellion of yellow against time cracked something open. Community center bulletin boards became her new obsession. Between Zumba flyers and ukulele workshops, one notice stood out: virtual journaling circle, no experience needed but bring snacks. Creator signed up, then promptly forgot until an email reminder chimed during Wheel of Fortune. She logged in mid-panic, sloshing chamomile onto her sweatpants. 6 faces blinked back: a retired teacher in Nova Scotia, a widowed baker from Chicago, even a trucker named Darnell who journaled between hauls. Their facilitator, a spry 70-something named Margot with neon reading glasses, winked. "Welcome to Rogue Historians Club." First, Linda's entries were stiff as starched sheets. Dishwasher broken. Called repairman. But Margot's prompts nudged her deeper. Write about something you stole as a kid. Describe a smell that rewinds time. Memories unspooled, swiping her brother's hockey puck, cedar scent of her father's workshop. Leather notebook grew supple with use, its pages absorbing coffee rings and ink smudges like a patient friend. Then came twist. Darnell shared a story about losing his route, only to stumble upon a diner that served pie exactly like his grandma's. "Sometimes life boots you sideways for a reason," he drawled. She snorted into her tea. Next session, she wrote about maple seed incident. Margot declared it accidental poetry. By midsummer, Linda's journal bulged with grocery lists morphing into gratitude notes, sketches of her overgrown garden, even a haiku about mismatched socks. She joined a memoir workshop local library, where a teen called her stuff low-key lit. One evening, she caught herself humming while scrubbing pans. Empty rooms didn't echo so much anymore, they held space for what came next. Leather notebook, once a relic, now lived in her tote bag, its spine softened by hope and habit. Somewhere between Darnell's truck stop wisdom and Margot's neon glasses, Linda had scribbled her way back to herself. Turns out, reinvention wasn't a grand gesture. It was maple seeds, stolen hockey pucks, and showing up, one messy, glorious page at a time. Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a rainy Tuesday in Toronto's East End, when she cracked it open with same stubbornness she'd once used to pry frozen car doors. 50 years old and suddenly alone in a too-quiet condo, she'd spent weeks pretending reruns of Corner gas-filled Void. But that notebook, worn edges catching afternoon light, whispered otherwise. First entries were stiff, like a dancer relearning steps. Made oatmeal. Forgot salt. Again. Not exactly eat, pray, love. But then, between grocery lists, she scribbled a memory, her daughter's first hockey game, tiny skates clomping down community center stairs. Ink bled as laughter bubbled up, followed by an ache so sharp she nearly snapped journal shut. Instead, she dug deeper, chasing that pain like a splinter needing removal. Online, she stumbled upon a virtual journaling circle, a motley crew of empty nesters, divorcees, and one retired plumber named Stan who wrote haikus about faucets. Their shared screens became lifelines. Linda's entries grew bolder, spilling teenage regrets, perm disaster of 87, midlife missteps, why did I buy those leopard print leggings, even gratitude for silence that no longer rang hollow. That leather cover, once stiff, softened with use, just like her. One evening, she described teaching her son to ride a bike in Trinity Bellwoods Park, how his wobbling silhouette had seemed to stretch into man he'd become. Tears smudged Paige, but for once, they didn't drown her. Instead, they lit something, a quiet pride in having loved fiercely enough to miss this hard. By spring, Linda's journal had become less scrapbook, more compass. She signed up for pottery classes local rec center, grinning as her thumbs dented clay with same determination she'd used to press pen to paper. Notebook stayed tucked in her bag, a silent ally against doubt. Some pages still held sorrow, but now they sat shoulder to shoulder with hope, an occasional doodle of Stan's alleged artistic faucets. Grief, she realized, wasn't a wall to scale but a river to wade through. And her words. Current that carried her forward, one stubborn sentence a time. Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a rainy Tuesday in Toronto's East End, when she cracked it open with a resolve that surprised even her. 50 wasn't too old to start fresh, right? She'd scoffed when her daughter mentioned virtual journaling circles, calling it millennial therapy, but now, with an empty house echoing like a cavern, she typed into a search bar. First entry was shaky, miss making school lunches. Miss yelling about wet towels. Then, gutsy move, she snapped a pic of her scribbles, posted it in online group. No filter, no apologies. A stranger from Arizona replied, same, sis. Keep going. Creator grinned. That leather-bound thing became her sidekick, stuffed in her purse on trips to community centers, where she jotted down overheard conversations, bingos rigged. My grandkid taught me TikTok. Fuel for her next entry. Then came twist. A local newsletter featured her journaling journey, calling it raw, real, lit. Suddenly, her inbox blew up with messages from women who'd also tucked away their dreams under piles of grocery lists. Even Marjorie, her bridge partner who'd rolled her eyes, navel-gazing, showed up her door with a fancy pen. Teach me, she muttered, cheeks pink. A library talk, she held up that battered notebook like a trophy. This, she said, thumbing its creased pages, is where I found me again, crowd erupted. Someone shouted, Queen. Later, scrolling through comments, you're glowing. Where's book deal? Linda chuckled. Who knew a menopausal woman's musings on mismatched socks and middle-aged dating could go mini-viral? She closed her laptop, tracing notebook's embossed edges. This is my start. Not bad for someone who'd once cried over silent phone notifications. Now? Her phone buzzed non-stop, new friends, invites, even a podcast request. Linda smirked, tossing it aside. She had pages to fill. Linda's leather notebook sat untouched for years, until a rainy Toronto afternoon, when she cracked it open like a stale fortune cookie and scribbled one messy truth. I miss chaos. No more lunchboxes to pack, no teenage drama echoing down halls, just quiet. Too much quiet. But that notebook, worn as her favorite sweater, became her rebellion against emptiness. She filled pages with half-baked haikus, grocery lists that morphed into gratitude notes, and doodles of her younger self wearing roller skates. She never owned roller skates, quirky brain glitch. Then she stumbled onto a virtual journaling circle, a ragtag group of women trading stories like baseball cards. Linda's first post was a ramble about burnt casseroles and missing her daughter's sarcastic commentary. Replies flooded in, same, queen. Write it till you feel it. Soon, she was hosting weekly prompts, describe your 20-year-old self in 3 smells. Go, her screen a mosaic of grinning faces from Texas to Tasmania. That notebook. Now stuffed with Polaroids, Subway stubs, and a pressed maple leaf from High Park, proof life wasn't shrinking, just shifting. By spring, Linda was guiding workshops, local community centers, teaching silver-haired newbies to scribble without fear. Messy handwriting means honest thoughts, she'd wink, tossing glitter pen skeptics. Her odd habit. Ending entries with a fake word, snickerdoodle-doo, flusterbliss, because joy deserved its own vocabulary. One evening, she read an old entry aloud to her virtual tribe. Empty nest feels like a theater after shows packed up. But guess what? I'm stagehand now, and lights are still freakin' lit. Cheers erupted in chat. That leather notebook, once stiff with neglect, had softened into something alive, just like her. Grab a pen, your next chapter's waiting. Scribble it wild.